The main goals of qualitative research are to describe and explain relationships, individual experiences, group norms, and other social phenomena. Qualitative research is typically conducted in the field and involves first-hand experience. It requires a systematic collection of data obtained through observations, document analysis, and/or interviews. As we build our Chapter 4, the question is, how do we obtain and gather data? And that's for our fun session today. A qualitative interview is a method of collecting data about an individual's experiences. This includes behavior, opinions, values, emotions, knowledge, sensory perceptions, and demographic characteristics. There are two types of qualitative interviews, formal and informal. Formal interviews are planned before conducted and requires an interview guide, which contains questions to be asked and the topics to be covered during an interview. Informal interviews allows the researcher to talk to the participant conversationally. Informal interviews do not usually require an interview guide and is usually used to establish rapport, understand the setting of the study, or to cover new topics. There are three types of formal interviews: unstructured, structured, and semi-structured. Unstructured interviews have open-ended questions that lets the respondents express their answers in their own way. Unstructured interviews are usually used in ethnographic research and in-depth interviews. It can also be a springboard to develop structured interviews. Structured interviews strictly follow the flow and the content of the interview guide. This type of interview is best used when the researcher has full understanding of the topic. In semi-structured interviews, the researcher may stray from the guide if he or she deems necessary. It is best used when the researcher has sufficient knowledge about a topic he or she is investigating but needs to learn more about it. There are 6 classifications of questions when conducting an interview. Demographic characteristics asks about the participant's age, educational background, religion, socioeconomic status, and the likes. Behavior asks what the interviewees are doing or have done. Emotions ask about how the interviewee feels or have felt. Knowledge asks questions that seek the familiarity of the interviewee on a certain subject. Opinions or values asks what an interviewee thinks about a certain topic or an issue. Sensory perceptions asks questions about what an interviewee has seen, smelled, tasted, heard, or touched. It is advisable that researchers include all classifications of questions when making the interview guide to elicit rich information when conducting interviews. Interviews can be divided into 3 parts: before, during, and after. Here are some useful tips when conducting your interviews. Before you start conducting your interviews, always plan your course of action. Reread your research proposal and prepare guide questions. It is also important that you make sure your recording devices have sufficient battery and will work properly. During your interviews, always establish rapport with your participants. Always explain to them and give them an overview and the purpose of why you are conducting your study. Engage your participants to elicit rich answers. Having a backup recorder would also be a big help in case your main recorder fails during the course of your interview. After your interview, always give gratitude to your participant. Immediately check if your recording device worked properly throughout the interview and transcribe your recording verbatim as soon as possible. Writing significant observations during your interview would also be helpful. Now that you've gained the knowledge on how to conduct a qualitative interview, you now have the skills to elicit rich data needed for your qualitative study. That's all for now, and I'll see you on the next fun session.